The Story of Rahab. The city of Jericho stood mighty and proud, its towering walls stretching toward the heavens. Inside, the streets bustled with merchants, soldiers, and whispers of war. News had spread like wildfire, an army was coming. A strange army, unlike any Jericho had faced before. The Israelites. Rahab had heard the stories. A nation that walked through the Red Sea as if on dry land. A people whose God rained fire from the sky and split rivers in two. Jericho trembled in fear, but Rahab. She watched. She listened. She knew something was coming. The arrival of the spies, late one evening, just as the city gates were about to close, two men slipped into the shadows of Jericho. Their eyes darted around, their cloaks pulled tightly over their faces. They were not merchants. They were not travelers. They were spies. Rahab, a woman of sharp wit and hidden strength, saw them first. Her home, built into the very walls of Jericho, was a perfect place for men to disappear. Without hesitation, she beckoned them inside. "You are not safe in the streets," she whispered urgently. "Come with me." The men hesitated, glancing at each other. Could they trust her? But as the sound of marching boots echoed through the alley, they had no choice. They followed Rahab into the shadows of her house just as soldiers stormed past, searching. The king's men. Moments later, a heavy knock thundered against Rahab's door. Her heart pounded. She had seen many things in her life, but never had she hidden enemies of the city. "Open up in the name of the king," a voice commanded. Rahab took a deep breath, steadying herself. With a practiced calm, she opened the door. The captain of the guard stood before her, flanked by armed soldiers. His eyes, sharp and suspicious, roamed the room. "We have been told that 2 Israelites entered your house. Bring them out." Rahab's mind raced. A single wrong word, a flicker of fear in her eyes, and she would be dead. But she forced a nervous laugh. "Yes, they were here," she said, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "But they left just before the gates closed. If you hurry, you might still catch them." The captain studied her face, then turned to his men. "Go. Search the city. Find them before they escape." The soldiers rushed off, their torches flickering as they disappeared into the night. Rahab slowly closed the door, exhaling shakily. The spies were still inside, hidden beneath stalks of flax on her rooftop. A dangerous choice. When the city had settled into uneasy silence, Rahab climbed to the roof, where the 2 men lay motionless. "Why did you save us?" one of them asked, his voice low but firm. Rahab's eyes burned with something beyond fear. "Because your God is not like the gods of Jericho," she admitted. "We have heard what he did in Egypt, how he dried up the Red Sea, how he destroys kings who stand in his way. All of Jericho is afraid, but I believe. I know your people will take this city. And when you do, promise me one thing." The spies sat up, listening intently. "Spare my family," Rahab pleaded. "Swear to me by your God that when Jericho falls, you will let us live." The men exchanged glances, then nodded. "Our lives for yours," one of them said. "But you must do exactly as we say." Rahab leaned in, waiting. "Hang a scarlet cord from your window," the spy continued. "When we return with our army, whoever is inside your house will be safe. If they step outside, their blood will not be on our hands." Rahab clutched the scarlet cord tightly. The weight of her choice pressed on her chest. She had just betrayed her own city, for a chance at salvation. But would the spies keep their word? Would the Israelites truly spare her family? And what would happen when the people of Jericho discovered what she had done? As the night deepened, Rahab stood by her window, gripping the scarlet cord. Somewhere in the darkness, the Israelite spies slipped away into the night. And deep inside, she knew, there was no turning back now. The night was heavy with silence, but Rahab's heart pounded like the war drums she had heard during Jericho's battles. The spies were gone, vanishing into the darkness, but their words clung to her mind. A scarlet cord. A single thread between life and death. She hid it carefully, her fingers trembling as she tucked it away. For now, she had to act normal. No one could suspect what she had done. A city on edge. The next morning, the city was different. Fear hung thick in the air. Soldiers paced the streets, their eyes darting suspiciously. The king had ordered a full search, every home, every alley, every shadow. Did they find the spies? A merchant whispered to his neighbor. No, the man muttered, shaking his head. And that is what frightens me. Rahab moved through the market, keeping her face calm. But she could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching. The people of Jericho were afraid, but not of spies. Not even of war. They were afraid of the God of Israel. The sound of war. Days passed. Then came the first sign. Trumpets. A long, eerie blast echoed across the plains. Rahab rushed to her window and gasped. The Israelites had come. From the walls of Jericho, people gathered, staring in disbelief. The Israelite army stood in perfect formation, their warriors silent, their priests carrying something sacred, the Ark of the Covenant. Then, instead of attacking, they did something no one expected. They marched around the city. Once. Then they left. Confusion rippled through the streets. Whispers turned into laughter. Is this their mighty plan? Someone mocked. But Rahab felt no relief. This wasn't over. This was only the beginning. The waiting game. Day after day, the pattern continued. The Israelites marched around Jericho, their trumpets sounding, but they never attacked. The people of Jericho grew restless. Some mocked them. Others, like Rahab, remained silent, watching, waiting. Then came the seventh day. Rahab woke with a chill crawling up her spine. Something felt different. By midday, the Israelites arrived once more. But this time, they did not march just once. They marched 7 times. The ground beneath Jericho seemed to tremble. The tension in the air was unbearable. People clutched their weapons, gripping their children's hands. Then the trumpets blew, louder than ever before. A deafening, unbroken blast that shook Rahab's bones. The shouts followed. A roar of voices, powerful, unstoppable. And then the walls cracked. A sound like thunder tore through Jericho, as stone split apart. Screams filled the air. Buildings shuddered. The mighty walls, the walls that had protected Jericho for generations, collapsed as if crushed by an invisible hand. Dust swallowed the city. Chaos erupted. Soldiers ran, but it was too late. The Israelites were coming. A house in the ruins. Rahab grabbed the scarlet cord, her hand steady despite the terror outside. She had done as the spies commanded. The cord swayed from her window, a silent cry for mercy. She huddled with her family, their hands clasped in prayer. Footsteps pounded closer. War cries filled the streets. The destruction of Jericho had begun. Then, voices outside. Find the house with the scarlet cord. Rahab's breath caught. Would they keep their promise? The door burst open. Warriors flooded in, weapons drawn. For a moment, all was still. Then one of them stepped forward. Rahab recognized him instantly. The spy. You kept your word, he said. And just like that, Rahab knew. She would live. She had done as the spies commanded. The cord swayed from her window, a silent cry for mercy. The air inside Rahab's home was thick with silence. Outside, the city burned. The sounds of Jericho's destruction, the clash of swords, the screams of the fallen, the crumbling of stone, echoed like a nightmare. But within these walls, there was only waiting. waiting for what came next. A promise kept. The Israelite soldier, the spy she had hidden days ago, lowered his sword. His eyes swept over Rahab's family huddled in fear. "She's the one," he said, turning to the men behind him. "Take them outside the city. No harm must come to them." Relief washed over Rahab, but it was quickly swallowed by urgency. The Israelites had stormed through the city like an unstoppable wave, cutting down warriors, destroying idols, burning everything that stood in their way. "Go," the soldier urged. "Now?" Rahab didn't hesitate. She gathered her family, her father, her mother, her brothers and sisters, and followed the warriors through the broken streets. Bodies littered the ground. Smoke curled into the sky. The once mighty city of Jericho was no more. As they passed through the rubble, Rahab kept her gaze ahead. She did not look at the faces of the fallen. She did not mourn the city that had cast shadows over her life. She had chosen a different path. A new beginning. Beyond the ruins, the Israelite camp stretched across the plains. The people stared as Rahab and her family approached. Whispers rippled through the crowd. The woman from Jericho. A foreigner. A Canaanite. Rahab held her head high, but doubt gnawed at her heart. She had risked everything to align herself with these people, yet she was still an outsider. Would they truly accept her? Then, the crowd parted. A man walked forward, tall, strong, his presence commanding. Joshua, the leader of Israel. The same man who had ordered Jericho's destruction now stood before her. Rahab dropped to her knees, her breath quickening. Would he see her as an ally, or a traitor? The spy stepped beside Joshua, and spoke in a low voice. "She saved us. She believes in our God." Joshua studied her, his expression unreadable. Then, after a long moment, he nodded. "You and your family will stay among us," he said.
"Because you trusted the Lord, you will have a place in Israel." Rahab's heart pounded. Not a slave. Not a prisoner. A place among them. Tears stung her eyes, but she did not let them fall. Instead, she rose to her feet. She had not only survived Jericho's fall, she had stepped into a new destiny. Beyond redemption, days turned to weeks. The Israelites moved forward, conquering more lands, fulfilling the promises of their God. And Rahab. She was no longer the woman of Jericho. She embraced this new life, learning their ways, their faith, their God. And in time, something unexpected happened. Rahab, the outcast, the foreigner, the woman who had once been known only for her past, married an Israelite man. A nobleman. His name was Salmon. Together, they had a son. His name was Boaz, a man who would later become part of the lineage of kings. The lineage of David. The lineage of Jesus Christ. The sun dipped low over the Israelite camp, casting golden light over the tents. Rahab stood at the edge of the settlement, watching the horizon. It had been weeks since Jericho fell, but in many ways, it felt like another life. She was no longer a woman of the city. She was no longer Rahab the harlot. Yet, whispers still followed her. A stranger among God's people at the well, women drew back when she approached. When she walked through the camp, conversations hushed. "She is a Canaanite," they murmured. "A woman of the night," another would add. "Didn't Joshua say she is one of us?" someone would argue. Rahab pretended not to hear, but the words cut deep. She had left Jericho behind, but could she ever truly escape her past? One evening, as she sat alone outside her tent, an elderly woman approached. Rahab tensed. Would this, too, be another reminder that she did not belong? Instead, the woman placed a loaf of bread beside her. "Eat, child," she said kindly. Rahab looked up in surprise. "Why are you kind to me?" The woman smiled, her weathered face soft. "Because I was once a stranger here too. And because I see what the Lord is doing in you." For the first time since leaving Jericho, warmth bloomed in Rahab's chest. Maybe, just maybe, there was a future for her in this place. An unexpected love. As the years passed, Rahab slowly found her place. The whispers faded. The people of Israel saw her not as the woman she had been, but as a woman of faith. And then, something happened that she never expected. Love found her. His name was Salmon, a respected Israelite leader from the tribe of Judah. He was strong, wise, and unlike the others, he did not look at her with judgment. He looked at her with admiration. One evening, as they walked together outside the camp, he turned to her and said, "You chose the God of Israel over everything you knew. That is not the mark of a harlot. That is the mark of a woman of great faith." Rahab's breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. In time, he asked for her hand in marriage. The woman the world once scorned had been chosen, loved, and accepted into the people of God. A legacy unfolds. Years passed. Rahab and Salmon built a life together, a home filled with faith and love. And then, one day, she held a newborn son in her arms. His name was Boaz. She could never have known then what God had planned. That her son would grow up to be a man of kindness and strength. That he would one day marry a woman named Ruth, another outsider who would find refuge under the wings of Israel's God. That through their descendants, a great king would rise, David, and that generations later, from her bloodline, the Messiah would come. The woman once called Rahab the harlot was now Rahab the redeemed. Her name would be remembered, not for her past, but for her faith. And in the records of Israel's history, she would forever be honored as a woman who had chosen God, and was chosen by Him in return. The end.